What's good, everyone? It's Dr. Nii here. By the time you hear this episode, I am home. Actually, we are home. Me and Dr. Renée, as well as the kids. We got back from our 3-week journey to Ghana, where we did a medical mission trip, and our living room is jacked up. Yo, there are bags everywhere. There's trinkets that we got from family that we gotta get together. There's clothes, everything. We gotta do laundry, and I'm going back to doing a trauma surgery shift in less than 24 hours. So I gotta do laundry quickly, and I gotta get on the road again. That's just kind of the name of the game, and that's how we do it. Yo, today is gonna be a replay episode like we've been doing over the last several weeks. Look, we had to take a hiatus, going to Ghana, taking care of kids, doing all these different things. Like, I can't come out with new episodes all the time. So this episode is gonna be a replay called Getting Paid Less Than Your Coworkers. Before I get into that though, real quick, 3 things that I think about when I get back from a mission trip that a lot of times I struggle with. These things are things that I think about as soon as I get back from a trip, and they stay with me for several weeks to months, maybe even years afterwards. So I got some notes here. The number one thing is I'm ordering less labs when I get back, right? So as soon as I am in Ghana, you notice from the get-go, from the house officers to the attendings to other healthcare professionals, clinical diagnosis is king, as well as physical examination. Those are the 2 most important things. And then they use laboratory values and maybe even some imaging to just confirm what their diagnosis is. It's really cold. Their clinical examination, their history is very on point. Whereas here in the United States, let's be honest, we oftentimes use laboratory values. We oftentimes use diagnostic studies, CT scans, MRIs, X-rays, really to kind of just direct where we want to go. And then a lot of times we admit patients and we're ordering daily labs reflexively without really changing what's going to happen with the patient. I know I do that, or at least I know we do that a lot, where a patient will get admitted and daily labs will be ordered. QAM labs will be ordered, or someone is in the ICU, chest X-rays are ordered, even though it's not changing what we're going to do for the patient. So a lot of times reflexively, I get back, I cut all that stuff off as long as it's not going to affect the patient, as long as it's not going to change my clinical decision-making. I stop all that and I go and do things accordingly on a daily basis. Even IV fluids, stop all that and just kind of start from the beginning and try to be a little bit more resourceful, a little bit more efficient with how I'm giving and using resources, whether it's labs, IV fluids, medications, and so forth. The second thing is there's always this existential discussion that I have in my mind, which is, can I practice in Ghana when I get back? I'm in Ghana, I'm practicing just for 2 weeks, but I'm not dealing with the frustrations that a lot of Ghanaian doctors, medical professionals have to deal with who stay there longer than obviously 2 weeks. So yeah, for me, it's sweet, right? I come in, I take care of patients, everything is for free. I don't have to worry about making a living with whatever I'm making as a physician in Ghana. I don't gotta deal with any of that stuff. So a lot of times I'll come back and say, oh yeah, I could definitely do it, but can I really? Can you really do it? I don't know. I think I'd have to stay in the ground and do medical work a little bit longer than that to determine if this is something that I can do long term. Now, overall, the experience is amazing. I love it. It's as close to a physician or clinical reboot that you can get. But I do think that people who come back and say, yeah, I could definitely do this after only spending 2 weeks, that's a short period of time. And that's something that I think about a lot. But it's something that I'm strongly considering. Me and Dr. Renée have had long talks about maybe we should take a sabbatical, do some medical work here. And I think what it ultimately comes down to is, from an impact standpoint, can we impact this community more so than what we can do in the United States? And a lot of people have talked about this, right? In developed countries with mature healthcare systems, can an individual doctor affect a community as much as that individual doctor affecting a community in a low resource area, such as countries in Western Africa, countries in South America, countries in certain areas of Asia? Can one doctor really make a difference? And what you'll see is, yes, in these areas, they can make a huge difference. Having additional OBs can make a huge difference in not only infant mortality, but also maternal mortality can play a big role. So that's something that we struggle with. And that's something that I'm thinking about to this day. And then number 3, this is a little bit controversial, but I'm strongly considering that I think the medical community, medical education should make medical school students or residents do at least a month or a significant amount of time doing a medical mission outside of the United States. Practicing in the United States for the most part is pretty standard, whether you're in California or you are in possibly even like Mississippi, right? You have access to labs, you have access to radiology, you have access to physicians. Now, there may be less specialists in, for example, Mississippi as compared to California, right? That goes without saying. But I think there's a significant dramatic drop in what's available to you when you go to certain low resource countries. We have to be real about that. And I think that plays a part in how you think about how you're going to take care of patients. And I think having that experience dramatically changes what you do, what you order, what you're going to specialize in when you are are in that environment and then you come back to a developed, mature healthcare system. I think that plays a huge role. So that's something that I think I would love the medical community to talk about and to, really debate about, because I think it's worth that discussion. So those are the three things that I think about whenever I get back from Ghana. So number one is I'm ordering less labs, diagnostic studies. In general, I'm just using less resources as long as it's not affecting patient care. Number two, there's a discussion, existential discussion that I have in my mind. Can I practice in Ghana for long term? I'm talking about for a year, maybe even longer than that. And then number three, there's always this debate in my mind, but I think the bigger medical community should have this discussion is, should medical students and should medical residents be forced to do some type of medical mission outside of the United States? Something to think about. Let me know what you think. The show notes or down below will be the text number where you can text us and let me know what you think about these three things that I said. Now on to this episode. This is a recap episode where we talked about money trap number 3. And this was something that you guys really wanted to hear, which is, what impact does it have on your career when you're getting paid less than your coworkers? Whether it's $500, $1,000, or maybe even more than that, all of that stuff adds up, yo. I'm just gonna be really honest with you. There's a health affairs study that we quote in this episode where you hear a man and a woman go into the same specialty, but they come in at different rates. More likely, the man is going to come in a little bit higher than the woman. When you compare their earnings over 20, 30 years, and by the time they retire, we're talking about a $2 million gap between men and women. That's a lot of money, yo. That's a lot of money to be leaving on the table. And I should actually change the verb leaving money on the table, because a lot of times people don't know that they're leaving money on the table. So in this episode, it's really important to understand the concepts of negotiating. It's really important to understand the importance of going to human resources and understanding what the pay range is for your job, so that you know what room you have to negotiate. These are things that we talk about in this episode. So listen, I'm going to tell a real quick story. When I finished fellowship, I was working at a hospital. I was working as a locums doc, and I found out that there were some other doctors who had formed their own locums company, and they were working right next to me. So I would do my 2 weeks and I'd sign out to them and they'd take over. I found out they were getting paid for doing the same job. They were the same age as me. They had the same type of experience that I had. They literally were getting paid $1,000 to almost $2,000 per day more than I was. And when I found that out, I was completely shocked. They happened just to say that in passing. And when I found that out, I did the math really quick. I was like, wait, you multiply this times 24 hours or however long it is, hours in a day, then by the weeks and the months, and then by the years, and over time, you're like, wait, hold up. All of this math adds up. Like, it feels like I'm running a race with a parachute on. Millions of dollars just kind of in terms of a big gap between me and those folks who were doing things on their own. And that's when I really caught game to the importance of coming in and being aggressive with your negotiations, or at least negotiating from a point of knowledge and understanding what the pay range is for whatever you're doing and being able to go from there. So without further ado, we're going to jump into this episode. Remember, this is money trap number 3, getting paid less than your coworkers. Make sure you text us and let us know what your thoughts are on these episodes. Without further ado, Alfred, run the tape. The way how you show you respect someone is how you pay them. Surprise, we don't respect women in many facets of the workforce. So this study showed that basically there are gender differences in how we pay. If you simulate this career over 40 years, it comes out to $2 million. When they got their initial salary, that's where the biggest gap was. Women, when you first start working, this is when you're supposed to swing for the fences. This episode is brought to you by Set for Life Insurance. Listen, docs. One of the first steps we took to pay off our student loan debt was realizing we paid way too much for our disability insurance. That all changed when we found Set for Life Insurance. They helped us with a customized insurance policy that met our needs and, most of all, budget. To learn more, check out setforlifeinsurance.com. Have you heard of the Healthy Conversations podcast? If you're looking for a podcast that moves the health conversation forward, then I highly recommend Healthy Conversations, the acclaimed podcast from CVS Health. Hosted by Dr. Daniel Kraft, the Harvard and Stanford trained physician scientist, Healthy Conversations provides both inspiration and cutting-edge information about the forefront of medical practice. You can find it wherever you're listening to Docs Outside the Box, and don't forget to subscribe. And to make it easier, the link is in the show notes. What's good, everyone? This is Docs Outside the Box. We are fusing money, medicine, and pop culture. Listen, I am your host, Dr. Nii. I am also joined by...
Dr. Renee. That's
Hey,
with an
Dr. Renee.
accent aigu.
Hey, so for all of our French-speaking Francophiles and Haitian-speaking
No
Creole people,
Francophiles. It's
or whatever it is,
Francophone.
Francophone, whatever it is, that's a little lesson for y'all. Aigu, wait, how you say it again? Aigu?
Accent aigu.
Accent aigu, right? I said it right?
Yes.
All the French-speaking people, all the Creole-speaking people, whatever, they're like, yo, oh my God, they're shaking their head. Well, listen, I see you're in my studio. You rocking my lights and all that stuff on my studio.
The studio.
And you are enjoying yourself. You got the kids to sleep. We are recording almost at 11 o'clock at night. And we got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to talk about today. So let's jump right into it. So listen, we are going to be covering money traps, right? Right now we are on money trap number 3, which is related to income. Basically, doctors not asking for the right amount of income. Doctors not asking for or negotiating for what they're really worth. Doctors who are just so focused on going to work and what we do and what we call trading time for dollars. And that's all they do, that by the time they get to being old and they realize, hey, like what I could do in my 30s, I can't do in my 50s. I can't be waking up at 4 a.m. to patch or suture some drunk guy's eyelid or something like that at the age of 50 or 55. I don't want to get out of my bed and do this, So we're going to be talking about income, how to maximize the amount of income and, the mistakes that docs make and, how not negotiating can have some long-term effects.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Let's jump right into it.
Talking about, I think, we should also cover income in terms of not diversifying your income, and really looking at the fact that, yes, you are trading time for dollars, but you literally only have one stream of income. Yeah,
man. It's there's a lot. There's a lot. So listen, I always encourage everybody, text us at 833-230-2860. Remember, when you text us, that comes directly to our phones. If you agree with us, that's great. If you don't agree with us, that's all right. It's all good.
You're a hater, as Bomani Jones likes to say.
I know, right?
Also, don't forget, you can leave us a message at drneedarko.com. So awesome. Go ahead and leave us a message, and we will get back to you as well. So if that's easier for you, go ahead and do that.
Yeah. So listen, medical students, residents, early attendings, I want you guys to know that there is such a thing called trading time for dollars. What that means is you walk into a hospital, and if you walk into that hospital, you are going to get paid, right? We are in the 1%. Now, we may be in the bottom of the 1%, but we are definitely in the 1%.
Where are we? We in the 1.9% or something?
Yeah, we like in the 0.9%, basically, of the 1%. 0.99. We at the bottom, right? But we still are in the 1%. And, it's important for people to understand that when you go to work, that's how you get paid. And it's a very stressful job, right? On average, doctors work more hours or many more hours than any other profession out there. And as a result, we get compensated very well for it. I remember there was a study that came out years ago that showed like the best income that gives you the best combination of income as well as the ability to enjoy that income was somewhere like in the $75,000 range. Because anything more than that, you're going to be expected to do way more. You're going to be expected to give up weekends. You're going to be expected to do so many more things that you really aren't enjoying how you got that income or what that income can bring you. Anything less than 75, obviously you're struggling way more. And definitely like right now with inflation and, so I just think about that study and I think that I wonder if there's a sweet spot, if doctors are willing to say that there's a sweet spot where this amount of income is the perfect amount that pays for being able to see patients, being able to deal with all the stuff that, you would expect a physician to deal with, and also at the same time, enjoy the life that you've kind of always wanted to enjoy.
$1 million. That's what they're going to say.
Yeah, they would say that. But, but in today's world, I mean, $1 million is going to be there's a lot of expectations. Yeah. Right. It's like a basketball player or anybody in sports getting an exorbitant amount of money and being paid so much more than the rest of your peers, it's like, okay, well, not only are you getting paid way more than your peers, there's a lot more expectations. Fans are always going to expect you to, produce. They're going to expect you to bring a championship. The media is always going to be constantly focusing on you. When you don't show up, when you have an off day, people are going to be like, wait, man, like it's just, are you really ready
like,
for that?
The more money we come, oh God, the more problems we see.
Yeah. I'll be Puffy. You be Biggie. Yeah. But it's the truth. It's the truth, though, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, to what is it? To whom much is given, much is expected.
Absolutely. So it's the truth. I mean, but this is what this boils down to is, yes, I start off by saying trading time for dollars that we have to be really careful about, right? But it's really defining what active income is versus what is passive income.
Right.
So for the folks listening, active income it's basically income that you make from your job that you personally have to manage, you personally have to,
you have to show up for,
right? And I know people may be listening and are like, well, what's so bad about that if I make a lot of money? Or if I make, if I'm in the 1%, what's the big deal about that? Well, yes, that income is good, but it's taxed at the highest rate.
Right.
And the largest profession in this group, surprise, are physicians.
Right.
Whereas,
that's typically employed. Employed as opposed to independent contracting.
Right. That's true. It's true. But you could be an independent contractor and not know how to, do the tax code also. Hopefully you do. Hopefully you do. But, if you understand the tax code, then you can make it work on your behalf. Now, passive income, where we always hear people talk about passive income, what is that? It's earnings that are derived from, say, a rental property. You own a piece of property. Someone is paying you rent. You're not working for that money, so to speak. You own something. People want to use it and they pay you. Right? Or you make income from some type of business, some type of LLC, some type of situation where you're not actively involved in making that money. And the reason why
or at least you're not as active. So sometimes, part of the reason I'm kind of interrupting here is because sometimes people say, well, passive income isn't really passive, but it really is, because you do the work up front and then you let the product or the service do the rest of the work for you. So if you make like a course, right, an online course, you put in some work to do that course. But once the course is done, then pretty much the course, the amount that you're getting paid for the course doesn't nearly equate to the amount of time that you're continually putting in for the course in order to make it work.
Yeah, if you market that course really well and, 5 people buy it one day, then the next day 100 people buy it, the day after that, then 2,000 people buy it after that. Yeah, like you're making significant amount of money off of that one initial output of energy. Right. And the reason why people love this is the IRS looks at it differently. It's actually taxed at a lower tax rate oftentimes.
Yeah.
Right. That's why passive income is really a big deal. And yes, like some people will say, well, dude, like I got into this to take care of people. I didn't get into this to have passive income. Right. And I think that's I'm not gonna lie, I think that's a very noble way of looking at things, but I also think that's a very naive way of looking at things. Right. I just remember some of my attendings at Grady saying, are you sure you want to go into trauma? Are you really sure? Because at the time I was in my, late 20s, early 30s. And I was like, hell yeah. Are you sure you want to do trauma when you're in your 50s? Are you sure you want to do trauma when you're in your 60s? Hell yeah. Gang. Of course I want to do this. Right. Trauma life. Yes.
About that life.
And then you start to think about things. I started getting into my mid 30s and, now I'm in my early 40s and I'm like, yo,
you tired.
Dude, I'm tired. Like, I definitely am not into taking 24-hour call. As a matter of fact, I refuse to take 24-hour call. Right. But I remember in residency, early on in my career, I would do that all the time when we were trying to pay off debt, work those 24-hour shifts. And then maybe afterwards do an appy, on hour 25, 26, 27.
36.
That shit catches up to y'all. It catches up to you, y'all. I am telling you, it catches up to you. And after a while, it's like, yo, you got to pace yourself. You got to determine that there's only so much you can do, right? And just because you can see that many people, as much people as you think you can see, does that mean you're being as efficient as possible? Are you providing really good care to that patient? If you're seeing like, you know, a significant amount, like 40 people, 50 people in a day, how are you even writing notes at the end of the day?
Yeah, you are. You writing notes at home. You writing notes over the weekend. You writing notes on your vacation. I think it was what's his name? Is it Peter Gonzalez, the one that does the cartoons?
I think so, yeah.
Right? So I think it is. But Dr. Peter, I forget what his pseudonym is, but I saw one of his cartoons today actually, and I think he put something about a doctor being on vacation. And as you keep swiping, it's on Instagram, as you keep swiping, you see the doctor typing away. And he's like, as soon as I finish addressing these 150 charts, then I can spend time with my family. And it's like, is that what your vacation has become? Your vacation has become you worrying about what's at work. You might as well have just stayed at work.
I think a lot of people will look at that as an exaggeration and be like, of course I'm not going to be writing notes on vacation. Hold on. Let me finish my point. The point is that you're doing work during time when you are not supposed to be working. It's the same thing. There's no difference than when you come home and you're supposed to be making dinner or you're eating dinner with your kids and you're checking your notes, you're writing notes, you know, before you get into work, or you're writing notes after you get home from work. It's the same thing. Either way, it's your time. So whether you're on vacation or you're in the kitchen or whatever it is, you're doing something that you really should be doing in the hospital.
I would like for any doctors out there or residents out there to let us know, have you done your notes while on vacation?
Of course.
I
think they have. I think multiple people have. Right before you get on a plane, they doing notes.
I think they're doing it on the beach.
As they land.
I think they're doing it on the beach. I think they're doing it at the beach house. I think they're doing it at the ski lodge.
Hey, text us at 833-230-2860. Let us know. Jamar, what you doing? When you doing your... I'm going to call Jamar out.
You cannot rely
Dr.
on
Annie.
Jamar. Jamar going to carry the whole show.
Dr. Annie, when you writing your notes?
For the rest of the week.
When are you guys writing your notes? Tell us. Yo.
Yeah. But, I think that, again, like kind of like you mentioned, just having that income tied to your time and then having that one income, right? Because it's usually salaried. Okay. Now let's talk about being tied to your time and then it being salaried, right? It being salaried means that you're actually making less than what you should be making, considering the amount of time that you're putting in. Right?
Oh yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as residents. When residents say they get paid a certain type of labor, I'm not going to say that word, a certain type of labor, because they're bringing in an average of like $50,000, but they're working like 80 hours a week, unquote. Right? If you divide all of that out, if you take those hours and divide it into your salary, it's like worse than minimum wage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing that I think a lot of times we don't realize, right? When we're getting these emails and the subject line is like, make, gobs and gobs of money, however gobs and gobs of money you think, whatever that big number you think it is, like be a pediatrician and make $500,000, and it's like, oh, okay, great. But you don't realize like that $500,000, you're not just going to get $500,000 for working at an FQHC. You know what I'm saying?
So when you were in residency, did you think about this? Because you did a lot of night call. You guys had like a night shift. What do you call that?
Night shift.
You had like a night float plan.
Yeah, we had night float. We had 24-hour call also.
So when you were like in residency, did you ever say, or did anybody ever ask you like, can you see yourself doing this in 10, 20 years the same way?
I knew I couldn't do it then. You know me. I mean, since I was young, my brother always jokes about how I love my sleep. Like we could be up, joking, laughing, everybody at the party. Next, everybody's like, where's Nene? And they're like, oh, she went to bed. Like nighttime, like that's just not my thing, right?
Well, but most people don't want to work night shift. I get that. But what I'm talking about is even doing what you're doing, into year 15, 20, when you're in your 50s and 60s. That's waking up and delivering those babies.
I
That's
mean,
tough.
it's a lot. Like now I work the night shift, but that's a strategic thing for me to be able to, to be able to work as much as I want to work, which is a 12-hour shift, but also because of the way that I work, doing the weekends, I want to be able to come home to my family on, day number 4.
Okay, so hold on. Before we move on, then let's dig into that deeper. So, all of the doctors, for the most part, at your job, they do 24-hour shifts.
Yes.
So you were asked, or were you given the option to do a 12-hour shift? How did that work out? Where you where you ended up working 12-hour shifts versus 24?
So when I first started working this job, I was doing 24-hour shifts, and then I realized, because I only work weekends, what was happening was that at the end of my weekend stint, that I was too tired to drive home. And so that actually created a situation where I spent yet another day away from my kids.
So you would come in the night on Thursday night, and then you'll work 24 hours on Friday.
Yep.
You'd have Saturday off, and you weren't being paid at all for Saturday, right?
No.
You're in a hotel sleeping, recovering, and then you would work Sunday for 24 hours.
Yep.
And then I
was so tired on Monday, it was hard for me to drive home. Or I would drive home really, really late, and by that time, either the kids were asleep or I'd just come home Tuesday morning.
Not to mention your hotel room probably ended on a Monday morning at 11.
Right. Well, I would make them pay for it because...
Got you.
I would make them pay for it, because if I'm that tired because I was working for you, then you have to pay for me to sleep so that I can drive home.
Okay.
So I would make them pay for that. But if you realize what you said was, I would leave on Thursday, right? Usually Thursday afternoon/evening. I wouldn't be home until either late Monday night or Tuesday morning. And I'm like, wait.
No dinner made, nothing made. The fridge is bare when you bounce. Like, yo.
Y'all ain't got nothing.
We ain't got nothing.
And I was like, wait a minute. This was all literally for 2 days of work? Like, I'm just missing too much, right? So Thursday to Tuesday, and I'm missing like how many days with my kids for just 2 days of work because of a 24-hour shift. So what I realized was, well, I could work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and do 12-hour shifts and then be home by like Monday afternoon at a decent time. I wouldn't have to leave on Thursday. I could literally leave on Friday afternoon after my kids come home from school, and I could be home on Monday before they come back from school and be able to make dinner and do all of that.
And it's a little bit more efficient for you. It's a little bit.
Right.
So basically, you work a Friday night, a Saturday night, and a Sunday night, and then you come home Monday when you're rested. Right. And when you're off, you're not being paid for backup. You're not on backup whatsoever. No. So you ended up making things way more efficient for yourself. You're not getting decision fatigue because you're on hour 17, right, hour 19, hour 21 on the decisions you need to make on a patient. You get to sleep. You get a good something to eat. You get to recover, and then you get to come home. Exactly.
Now, people listening to this might say, yeah, but if you worked a full Friday and a full Sunday, you were getting paid for 48 hours.
Correct.
And now you're
that was
only
initially
getting paid,
what I was thinking. I was like, you better get that 48-hour pay.
Right. Exactly. And so now you're only getting paid for 36 hours because you're working 3 12-hour shifts. That is correct. But for my sanity and for the convenience of being home with my family on those days that I was missing out, which I wasn't getting paid for, then it was worth it for me to be like, well, no, it's better for me to get the 36-hour than the 48-hour. And that's the mistake that we make with income, right? We think, well, if we make more money, then the situation is better. And in this case, the situation was not better. It was much worse. And so that's the thing that we need to think about when we're talking about negotiating. You need to negotiate in a way that actually fits your lifestyle. Don't commit to stuff that you don't want to commit to in the long term. And
go ahead, please.
No, so I was going to say that, I wasn't offered to do 24 hours. I was actually offered to do, I wasn't offered to do 12 hours. I was actually offered to do 24 hours. But I said, listen, this is my situation. I explained to them exactly what I just explained to you guys. And I said, this works better for my lifestyle. So if you can't accommodate 12 hours, I get that. And, we can part ways. But if you can, I'm more than willing, to come onto the schedule. And I've been 12 hours for the last almost 2 years now.
So you made an ask because the worst that they could say is no.
Right. And so I don't even say that it's an ask, right? Like, I think we need to get the word ask out of negotiating contracts, right? Because asking makes it seem like somebody has an authority over you, right? And so for me, it's not an ask. It's, here are my conditions. Just like the hospital has conditions, it's a contract, right? I have to be satisfied with this contract, and so do they. So it's not an ask. It's here, it's a presentation of my conditions. And then they present their conditions, and then we see whether or not we can meet in the middle. And if it works, if my conditions work for them, great. If their conditions work for me, great. But it's not an ask. And I think we need to, especially as doctors, get out of the mode of saying that we're asking for something. Because I don't ask for anything. I just say, this is what I need in order for this to work.
I love it. So let's talk about when you were looking at this job, before you even got to that point of 24 hours versus 12 hours. I remember you negotiated on your own. But at this point, we had already used a lawyer to negotiate on our behalf. Why'd you negotiate this per diem contract on your own, right? And talk to us about that process.
So part of the reason that I negotiated it on my own was, one, I wanted to see if I could do it, right? That was one of the things that I just wanted to see. Could I do it? Number two, after having had a lawyer look at other contracts that we had negotiated in the past, I felt a little more comfortable with the fact that, okay, this negotiation went well. The way that we approached it with our attorney, I started thinking. Bring
your microphone up a little bit, Renee.
I started thinking that, maybe this is something that. Maybe this is a skill that we should get used to exercising, because this is not going to be the first time, and it's not going to be the last time that we're going to be negotiating something. And so, the process for me was very similar to what we went through with our lawyer, except I wasn't using a third party. And so in preparation for the things that I was going to present as my conditions, I wrote everything out, and the fact that it was per diem, I was getting no benefits. I pretty much it's like a locums contract, except it's W-2, right? And again, we talked about this on a previous show. I took that condition because at the time, the convenience of being able to work at that place and be able to, travel back and forth.
Yeah, it's only like an hour and a half away from home.
So it was a short, short travel distance. So I said, okay, you know what? The tax benefits would be great, but they don't outweigh the benefit of being able to travel a short distance, be able to have this flexibility, be able to be home with my son. So I made some trade-offs. But in the end, the negotiation for the rate was something I really wanted to see whether or not I could do on my own, because I felt like, I bring a certain amount of value. And so I wanted that value to be recognized. And so, they came in with a pretty low offer. And so I countered and, explained to them why I was countering, the way that I was, and they accepted. So, if you don't present your conditions, if you don't present what you want, you will never get it. Right. Because nobody's just going to give you something like, oh, I think you bring so much value, let me give you $1 million. It's like, no, they're not going to do that. They're always going to
Well,
lowball you.
but I also remember that before you went, you did some research and found out what the numbers are and what the average numbers are, and then you made some small little bumps and so forth. And when they accepted your offer, I was shocked. I was like, I don't know if they're going to give you that, but we ended up compromising at a point that you felt very comfortable at. And do you want to let people know what your pay rate is?
Do I?
Yeah, do you? It's up to you.
So I don't mind sharing my pay rate, except that I will tell you this.
You didn't think I was going to ask you that question, did you?
Except that I find that when we share our pay rate, especially as locums per diem docs, the problem is actually other docs. That's actually the problem.
What do you mean?
Right?
Explain.
So,
and then hold on, before you do it, your mic is like you're talking directly in your mic, so your P's and your plosives.
Am I popping?
Yeah, like come on, act like you've potted before.
Listen, this is your mic stand, so I mean,
but okay. Come on, you know what you're doing.
So,
let's do this. So let's talk about other docs because I'm interested in your perspective.
Yeah. So the problem is actually other docs, right? Other employed docs, as well as other contracted docs, right? And so herein lies the problem. When you share rates, what happens is people either rally against that or negotiate against that, right? So for example, if you share your rate, with an employed doc, all of a sudden they're like, wait, what? How do you make that much money per hour, right? Because then they start to do the math of their own salary and how much they're getting paid per hour, which we figured out, at least for residents, is less than minimum wage. Now, if you are a full-fledged attending and you make, I don't know, let's say $400,000 a year, but you're working, 120 hours plus a week, you start to realize that, wait a minute, not only am I working that much per week, but even on my quote unquote time off, okay, I'm technically still working. Whereas this locums doc or this per diem doc, they walk away and they never, they're not getting paid because they're not actually working. Whereas I'm not getting paid and I'm still working. And so they start to rally against that, which is the whole thing about a lot of employed docs not jumping on board with locums, right? Like not seeing the value in locums. You might see that also with locums docs, is that they will actually bid against that, meaning they will bid lower, right? They will bid lower
so they can
so that they can get
a longer period of time.
Exactly.
What's his name talked about that? Trevor Cabrera talked about that. He took a lower amount so that he could fit in and become the preferred doctor or contractor for, a said hospital. I don't know if you heard me on that one. At that point, I was like, I'm not really cool with that because I look at this almost like sports. Right? Like it's completely unheard of, whether it's the NFL, NBA, MLB, to hear players really negotiate against other players. As a matter of fact, they use each player's salary as like this. They're amazed by it because they know that, if Steph Curry gets a certain amount, then LeBron James knows, well, I'm better than him. So that's great he got that amount. As a matter of fact, when Steph Curry years ago signed his contract, I think it was for $250 million, LeBron James tweeted out a message that said, congratulations on this great contract, but just know that you're worth more.
Right.
Which is true, right?
Right.
The creme de la creme in the NBA, they bring so many eyes to the screen that what they're getting paid, whether it's a $30 million, $40 million contract, they're actually underpaid. And I can't say that for the middle of NBA players, but the creme de la creme, because the way how basketball works is different. But even in NFL, even in Major League Baseball, it's very rare that you'll see player A get a really great contract and then player B snipe and say, well, why did he get that? I should have got this. It's almost like, bet you got that, so now it's time for my raise. Yeah. And I think what you're basically saying is that rather than us look at it as, okay, locums doc A comes in at a certain rate, rather than just say, oh man, I need to say I should get a raise past that point, they just say, well, let me undercut that doctor and basically devalue your time, as well as devalue how much you're getting paid, right? Because you kind of make things work in the way how you make things work for you. And if someone is like, yeah, I want to get paid how much they're getting paid, but then in order for that other doctor to get paid, they take more call or they do more things. They, in essence, are making your contract worth way less than what it was before.
Right. And not only are they doing that, but they, you know, in a sense, they are contributing to their own burnout, right? Because if you're employed and you're getting a certain salary, now you want to potentially take more call, know that whatever rate that you're going to get, you're probably not going to get what you actually deserve.
Right.
Even if it's the same rate as the locum stock, right? Because the locum stock, remember, the locum stock gets paid for when they are working. Okay. So even if you get paid for that extra call, what you're not getting paid for is that original, right? That original work that you're doing.
I get you. I just don't want to lose people too much, because sometimes if we get too far into the woods, it goes over people's eyes.
Yeah.
So you mentioned burnout, and you know, the Medscape put out a study in 2022 that studied, or at least got the surveys of doctors, and actually burnout among physicians is the highest that it's been ever, right? So burnout among physicians, now granted, COVID had a lot to do with this.
Right.
But burnout among physicians is up to 47%.
Damn.
Guess which two specialties were the highest? Brrr, drum roll, please, right? Number one is ER, right? Not surprised. And then number two was critical care. Now, last year was critical care for obvious reasons, right?
Right.
For COVID and so forth. But when you look at the percentages of physicians who are burnt out, 60% say it's due to bureaucracy in the hospital.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right? 60% say that. 39% say lack of respect from administrators and colleagues. 34%
Which goes along with bureaucracy, I think.
Yeah. 34% say long hours.
Yeah, which goes along with bureaucracy. All of those literally are just trickle down from bureaucracy.
And 34% say it's due to their personality or maybe even family traits, right? So that's still that's a significant amount, right?
That's almost half of doctors, you know, being burnt out. 47%. That's a lot.
For me, I look at this almost like I like to, you know me, I love sports. So I always look at the parallels between being a physician, being a professional, and what we do and what we see in sports. And I would have to say, like, ER doc, critical care docs, it's almost like being a running back in football, right? Like it was once the preeminent position in football, but you take a lot of hits.
Yeah.
And you take a lot of hits, you get the ball a lot, you get a lot of the praise. This is years ago, right? Football has changed now, but years ago, the running back was the creme de la creme, was the preeminent position, but they take a lot of hits, they get a lot of injuries, they get paid the most at one point, but they also have shorter NFL careers, right? Because they have these more significant injuries, they get hit more and so forth. So if you look at like ER and critical care, yeah, like it's a huge risk.
They take a lot of hits.
The stress, yeah, you're right. The stress is high. They get paid well, but how long are they going to last?
Yeah.
And this is why it's, you know, we bring it back to making sure that you're getting paid, you know, commensurate to the work that you're doing. You're negotiating and doing the things that you need to do to make sure that you are getting paid based off of the value that you're bringing to a hospital. If you're looking for a podcast that moves the health conversation outside of the box, then I highly recommend Healthy Conversations, the acclaimed podcast from CVS Health. Hosted by Dr. Daniel Kraft, the Harvard and Stanford-trained physician scientist, Healthy Conversations provides cutting-edge information about the forefront of medical practice. On each episode, Dr. Kraft sits down for one-on-one interviews with doctors and tech innovators who are transforming healthcare to address some of the most pressing issues. If you're looking for entrepreneurial inspiration, then I recommend their episode on how the NHS evolved to support physician entrepreneurs. This is where Dr. Kraft interviews Dr. Tony Young of England's National Health Service on medical innovation. Or listen to their recent conversation on neurodiversity with legendary animal behaviorist and autism advocate Temple Grandin. So look, don't miss out. Listen to Healthy Conversations from CVS Health. It's available for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Link is in the show notes. Let's talk about something that I thought I was going to start the show off with. It kind of had me heated. So, we're trying to expand the reach or the message of Docs Outside the Box. And there's this one academic conference that we want to attend. We went and did the work of looking up how to create a presentation at this academic work, conference. And you went ahead and did the research. You came up with a talk about how physicians get paid, about how they handle their finances, and basically the lack of education that doctors get, whether they are in schooling or they're in training as residents. And as a result, there's some major decisions that are made in terms of what geographical position they're going to be in, what specialty they're going to go into. All of this stuff is all dictated by money, which ultimately, we all take the Hippocratic Oath or some form or fashion of it. And, the majority of our decisions are based on finances, which is a problem. So long story short, we got our talk accepted. We said that we're going to team up with some really big name, well-known, well-established other doctors who are in the personal finance world. I'm not going to mention them right now, but we had some heavy hitters. It got accepted.
Yep.
And then what pissed me off is that, it didn't piss me off, but I think at first I was thinking
it was par for the course.
Well, let's talk about what happened. So we ended up finding out after everybody who we wanted to come to this meeting, they said, yeah, we're going to come along. We got it accepted, which was great. But now we've just found out that they're not going to pay for flight. They're not going to pay for any registration. They're not going to pay for hotel. Yeah, so we're just going to go there. We're just going to go there on our own dime and just present this and see how it goes. Well, the majority of the other folks that we had decided to step away. Now,
all of them.
Well, they all bounced. And I don't blame them. Actually, I applaud them. And one of them said, well, listen, this is a topic that all doctors need to hear about. This is a topic that academic institution really needs to be, that needs to put this front and center. And the fact that they're not going to pay, right, just even if it was $1 it cost, just the notion that they weren't going to provide any type of assistance whatsoever shows that they undervalue what we bring to the table as physicians. And it basically goes in direct contradiction to what this topic is going to be about.
Exactly.
And that doctor just said, I'm out. Right. And I was like, yo, mad props to you. That makes a lot of sense. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, looking at the proposal that we wrote, I mean, I just don't understand. Well,
and I do understand. That proposal was dope. That was a great proposal, and to the point where they accepted it.
Yeah. And there's never been a topic like that. I looked at previous years. There's never been that topic of personal finance at all. No money talks at all for that conference in the past. And so, the fact that, just the irony of the topic and the fact that they were not going to pay, for me, is just like, man, this is par for the course, right? This is what academic institutions often do, right? They either
but to be honest, remember I asked you
to some extent.
Well, remember I asked you, I was like, well, are they going to pay? Because I remember I didn't think that they were going to pay, and I was like, oh, it's still good. But oftentimes what my expectations are doesn't match with either way
with reality. Right.
I wasn't thinking, but thinking was like they actually should pay something. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think, absolutely. They should pay something. But I think academic institutions, they put value to certain things, and other things they don't put value to, right? And the problem is that as physicians, we often think that if we're teaching, that we should be teaching for free, or we should be teaching for a very undervalued, a very undervalued worth value, or whatever it is, right? So, when we see that academic institutions pay big name speakers, right? They would never ask Oprah to come out and talk and speak for free. They wouldn't even ask Dr. Oz to come out and speak for free, right? Because he has transcended the, I'm just a doctor now. Now he's a television, blah, 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 right? But as a physician.
Senate candidate.
Yeah, Senate candidate. As a physician, as an attending, as a faculty member, you're always expected to come and speak for free or some really, really low amount of money. Okay? Because academic institutions
be a part of some type of committee, do a committee for free, or yeah,
exactly. Join this committee, join this board. Well, boards are a little bit different, but those things, those types of things, they expect you to do for free. But the problem is that as physicians, we have accepted that. We have accepted that you should come and teach for free. You should come and do a presentation for free. You should come and do this talk for free. And so I would not be surprised if, we told this story to other physicians and they said, well, why would you ever expect to get paid? Like, you're giving a talk. It's an academic institution. You shouldn't expect to get paid.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's a major, and I think when anybody who's listening to the show, I think the majority of people listening to the show, well, it's different. The people listening to the show are on a different path. Yeah. They're on a different trajectory. But I think if you were to put this on an academic podcast or put this in front of academic people, they would say, what the hell are you guys thinking? Right. What would you expect?
Right. Exactly.
And we're not saying that we're shocked. We're just saying that our expectation is that we need to get whatever it is, there has to be something that's going to be worth our time. So as a matter of fact, we're actually responding back and saying, hey, academic institution, academic conference, we offer to do this in this way because not only will it benefit your conference members or the people who come, it would also benefit us in this way, in this fashion. And if they don't go for it, then they don't go for it, and we move on. Right. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you and I are a little bit different in terms of the other panels or the other panelists that bowed out. We have other options on the table to be able to still go to this conference. But again, we present our conditions, and if the conditions are accepted, then great. We can go to the conference and we can present. If the conditions are not accepted for this, for this academic institution, then
it was boiling.
Then it didn't work out.
I was a little upset about it, and but after a while, I got it, and it's just like, wow. But it lets you know, guys. But I was actually really proud about what that doctor wrote. I was like, that was great, very effective, short email, and straight to the point. And I was like, done. That's it, and move on.
Right. Exactly.
So let's jump really into how not negotiating or working for less than your worth, right? Less than the value that you bring. That's the better word to use. Right. Working less than the value that you think you should be getting, what that does for you. So there is a study that I talked about with about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we put out a discussion with one of the recruiters from Provider Solutions and Development. We talked about how female physicians earn an estimated $2 million less than male physicians over a simulated 40-year career. That's a study that came out by Health Affairs. We were talking about the man-woman income gap that occurs in healthcare, but obviously,
that was episode 293.
Right. The way in which we treat women just in general, a lot of people say, like, the way how you show you respect someone is how you pay them. Right. So just in general, surprise, we don't respect women in many facets of the workforce, and healthcare happens to be one of them. So this study showed that basically there are gender differences in how we pay. Right. And if you simulate this career over 40 years, it comes out to $2 million. Right.
Which is significant.
That is a significant amount. That is like retiring at the age of 70 as opposed to retiring at the age of maybe 55 or 60. Right. Or, whatever you may want to think about it. Think about how that's generational wealth for certain people. Right. So what they ended up finding in the study, if you go into deeper, it says that there are gender differences were largest in the surgical specialties.
Oh, I'm not
Right.
surprised at all.
Whereas in the primary care field, you didn't really see too much of a difference. There are some differences there, but it wasn't statistically significant. Where you saw the biggest difference was in surgical specialties, which makes sense, like you said. And if you adjust it for hours worked, clinical revenue, practice type, and specialty, that's the results that they came up with. Now, the big point that they came up with is, over time, there may be a little bit of a decrease in the difference of men and women, right? So what I mean by that is if
Come
you
closer
have,
to your mic.
if you, I was getting far away, my bad. Let me not forget how to pod. If you have Dr. A who's a man, Dr. B who's a woman, right? Like if you catch them mid-career and then you take it always to the end, you'll see like a decrease in the salary gap, right?
Right.
But the biggest point of what I'm trying to say is when they got their initial salary, that's where the biggest gap was.
Right.
Right. And that's why in that episode, I had mentioned like women, when you first start working, this is when you're supposed to, this is when you're supposed to swing for the fences.
Yeah.
This is when you're not supposed to be meek. This is when you're supposed to go for it. And, the other thing
think about the number of years that go by before you get to that end where you actually don't have as much of a difference anymore. How many years have you been working such that you had so much of a difference that you were missing out on all of this money?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, this study right here, this one focused on community physicians, right? Whereas there was a study by the AAMC that focused on physicians who were in academic medicine. I'll get to that in a second, but you want to tell a story of one of your partners who was getting paid less
than
the new partner who got brought on.
Yeah. So a previous partner of mine was chair of the department, female physician, and, had so many different, so many years of experience, at least 30 years of experience. She was chair of the department, like I said, but we got a new physician that came in, maybe about the same years of experience as she had. He was new to the hospital, and she found out that he was making $50,000 more than she was. And not only that, like he was somebody who hadn't actually done OB in quite a number of years. So he hadn't done full scope OBGYN in quite a number of years. And in all of her career, she never stopped doing full scope OBGYN. But he was also, he was making $50,000 more than she was. And he was not the chair of the department. He did not come in with any other title other than new OBGYN on the block. So, when she found that out, she was just like, oh my gosh. I'm like, well, you got to negotiate. You need to go in and tell these people that, listen, we can't be doing, we can't be having this guy come in. I'm chair of the department. I'm doing full scope OBGYN. I've been doing it for however many years, and he's making so much more money than me.
Well,
I need to be making as much
let me
as
ask you
him,
the question.
if not more.
The first time she told you about this was what she was saying? What did she say she was going to do before you mentioned negotiate? Did she say she was going to go negotiate? Did she say that she was going to bring it up? I'm very interested in.
She just said she found out.
Okay. So
she
you
just
brought
said
up
she
the whole
found
negotiate
out.
thing.
So yeah, I brought up to her, negotiating and, and I don't know if that had already been in her mind, but for me, that was my immediate reaction, right? Was that you need to negotiate that. Like that's, that's off the rails. Like that's not acceptable.
What'd she end up doing?
She did end up negotiating and she did end up, getting that raise. It took some time though. It took months before they would entertain it or before they would actually, implement that change. And so, even during those months, she still was not making that money. You know what I mean? And so, we see this all the time.
So let's start off by just saying, so that, first of all, just because someone is a chairman in your department, folks, that doesn't mean they know how much they're getting paid in comparison to how much you're getting paid. Yeah. And over all the years that I've negotiated a contract, I've never had that discussion with someone who's the chairperson or any physician, quote unquote, who wasn't in the C-suite.
Right.
So any of my colleagues, anybody who was considered to be, quote unquote, a supervisor in my department, I've never talked to them about my contract. It's always been, hey, when are you jumping on the team? And when are you going to take call? And then that's pretty much it. In terms of salary, that is always talked with someone who's in the C-suite. So the CEO or the chief operating officer, never with your chairperson. So I just want people to know that. And the reason why I bring that up is, I don't know if you guys remember Physician X, right? Physician X from 2 years ago. Physician X was a physician who got an opportunity to be a director of a specialty at a small hospital. Yeah. And she was at this facility. And remember, the big mistake that she made was she trusted what her chairperson said, and she trusted what, the hospital said, even though they didn't put it in paper. And her lawyer, reviewed everything in her contract, and then also was, got a chance to review what the verbalized things that were said contract wise, but just verbalized. They weren't actually in the contract. And the lawyer said, yeah, you shouldn't take this job. Right. And lo and behold, this doctor, Physician X, took the job anyway, and it ended up ruining her career, almost ruining her career. Right. Yeah.
That was episode 170.
170? Okay, we got to make sure we put a link to that. So episode 170, I want y'all to listen to that, folks. Yeah. That was Physician X, and this is a great episode. This physician was cold as a resident, amazing, did amazing work, was highly sought after, was given a special type of title. But a lot of the things that she was promised was verbal instead of written in the contract. And she didn't listen to her lawyer, and, ended up coming back and like a boomerang smacking her in the back of the head. And, I remember one of the things that she said is, oh yeah, I was talking to my chairperson about like the salary. And I was like, I don't think you should be doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think you should be doing that. You should not be talking to your chairperson about this stuff.
But, again, going back to, what I talked about with, basically revealing or disclosing your rates or your salary, you have to think about, well, if she was having that discussion with her chairperson, which actually was a mentor of hers, then why did everything else pretty much go to hell, despite the fact that she should have had somebody in her corner, right? So it's like, hold on a second. I'm telling you all of this information. I'm giving you all this information, and yet I'm still getting screwed, right? And, and there were a number of factors, obviously she didn't listen to her lawyer. That was one thing. But the fact that there were things that were talked about with her chairperson and her chairperson must have known, well, I don't see her contract, right? Like, I don't see her contract. So you're talking about these things with your chairperson, but those things don't end up in the contract, then you just have to think about, again, like, why is it?
I think she expected, I think the chairperson was saying, well, they'll take care of you. They'll take care of you.
But that's what I'm saying.
They'll take care of you.
But the chairperson obviously was much more seasoned than she was. Right. And so, come on, we all know, like, this whole, well, they'll take care of you. They'll take care of you. Listen, we all know that the hospital doesn't take care of you. That's not what happens. Okay. Otherwise, doctors would not be complaining about all the stuff that they have to do, because the hospital doesn't take care of you. Right.
Well, I think that the hospital's point is to try to get as many patients taken care of in the most economical way. Whereas that may not jive with, with what you want with your salary, right? That means that you may not have much wiggle room, quote unquote, you may think, with your salary. So real quick on this AAMC 2021 study, this one was put out by the AAMC, American Association of Medical Colleges, 2021, exploring faculty salary equity at U.S. medical schools by gender and race ethnicity. So this says that gender is the primary factor driving pay inequities. Men consistently made more than women of the same race and ethnicity. In most cases, white men received a higher median compensation than men of other races, and definitely women of all races and ethnicities.
Not surprising.
And it showed that in this study, well, they compared this to a study that the AAMC put out in 2019. It says that women were paid, for every dollar that was paid to men, women were paid anywhere between 72 cents to 96 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, not surprising.
Right. This is not from us. This is not a Docs Outside the Box study. This is from the AAMC. Right.
When we got time to do a study, Nee.
Right. So it's really interesting when you think about this, like women in general, like this pay gap that occurs. But then you have this study, that everybody talked about, this study that said the comparison of hospital mortality and readmission rates for Medicare patients treated by male versus female physicians. And they found it to be statistically significant that women end up having better outcomes than men. Like, this is something that women, if I was a woman, I'd be printing this out, taking this with me, be like, yo, you need to pay me like this.
Exactly.
I want to get paid this. I want to get paid this how much.
Exactly.
Come on.
We consistently get, you see this on OB very consistently. Like, very consistently. Like, the anecdotes on, in OB are just ridiculous, and we consistently get not just patient satisfaction, right? This ain't about no press gainy. I'm talking about consistently better outcomes. Consistently better outcomes, and including patient satisfaction. So, patient satisfaction, I know we kind of poo-poo that, but remember, that's what keeps the patients coming back. Okay? That's what keeps the patients coming back to the practice, to that hospital.
Yeah, it's different. It's different in trauma where
it's different in trauma.
They ain't got no choice, or emergency surgery. They ain't got no choice. Like,
right. They ain't got no choice. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But in OB, that's a big thing. That's a huge thing. When you have women of reproductive age, or women who aren't even reproducing anymore, but feel like, they have a connection either with an institution or with a specific, physician, that keeps them coming back. And so these are the things that as women, I feel like, we need to, like you said, we need to be like, wait, my value is much higher than this, because here's what I can bring to you. Here's what I can do for your facility, for your patients.
So I agree with you there. So what we talk about and actually what happens in practice is two different things. Because I think, just like investing, I think the same thing with negotiating. I think a lot of doctors, whatever gender you are, may feel like, yo, that's just not my bag. I don't know how to do that. What do you do? And I think that my advice, and I think you would agree also, is look, if you feel that that's not your bag, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't negotiate. That means that you need to get someone who knows how to do this.
Right.
More often than not, this is a lawyer.
Right.
And I think a lot of people the first thing they think about with a lawyer is that's expensive. Right.
But it's more expensive not to get a lawyer.
Like the average lawyer to look at a contract, a medical contract, we're talking about anywhere between $350 to maybe $2,000, depending. And then if you think about how much money you're going to be making and how much money a really good lawyer can get you, we're talking about they're getting you back in multiples back of that $600, that, initial output of money that you're paying them. Case in point, like, you remember in my first hospital employee contract, in there, it said that the hospital can take any money that I make when I'm doing any type of clinical work outside of the hospital.
Right.
So let's say I'm working at this hospital and I decide to do locums at another hospital. Well, hospital A can be like, hey, according to this contract, all that money that you made at hospital B, C, D, wherever it is, run me my money. I want my money.
Mine.
And I caught it and I was like, wait, this can't be correct. So I brought it to my lawyer. And he found it and he was like, yeah, I think you're right. This is what it means. And he got it negotiated out. But you can imagine like the multiples of money that I could have lost, like the thousands, the tens of thousands, the amount of money that we were paying off our student loans. I mean, there were certain months where we were putting in, like close to $10,000, $15,000 in addition towards our student loans to get them paid off. So you can imagine,
because
you multiply that, you multiply that by a month, 2 months, by 5, months, 10 months. We talking about a lot of money that when I initially paid this lawyer, we paid him what, $600 per contract.
Yeah.
And then we paid them just an additional more, like $300 each to not only review the contract, but then to call the hospital and negotiate and speak on our behalf. And then let us know what's going on. And the reason we did that, folks, is because I didn't feel comfortable speaking that legalese talk with the hospital. I didn't feel comfortable, not taking things personal. Whereas we're going to have him on a show in the future. He's very like systematic about it. He's very like non-emotional about it, which is the way that we all have to do and be about it. And that's why I mentioned, I was like, listen, it's really important that we, not equate value to self-worth. Right? Like the value and what we bring to a hospital is not self-worth. And I think we oftentimes conflate the two, and you can get really emotional when you present something to the hospital and they're like, yeah, we're not going to pay you that. And then all of a sudden you get emotional, and then you're not making right decisions. You're not making really, what's the word I want to use? You're not making rational decisions. So that's why it's important to get someone, pay for someone who can give you really good advice, take their advice, and possibly even negotiate on your behalf.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you mentioned something that is just so real to a lot of docs, especially those who are listening, to the show, is that there's a fear of negotiation. There's a fear.
Speak on it.
Right. Like, am I asking for too much? Should I ask? And again, I look at it as you shouldn't look at it as asking, because you're not asking. You are presenting conditions and they are presenting conditions. So the fact that you even think that you're asking already puts you in a mindset that somebody is in the authority to give you something.
Look at you. Right? I like that. See, that's why I married you. That's why I made you. That's why I made you temporary co-host. You know what I'm saying? I love that. Keep going.
But the other thing is, am I asking for too much? Right? Am I being unreasonable? Is what the hospital offering reasonable for me? And then if I counter, am I asking for too much? Right? And so I think people are afraid to negotiate because they think, well, will I miss out on a good opportunity?
Will they pull it away because I negotiated?
Right. Yeah. Did I negotiate my opportunity away?
Yeah.
Right? And remember, here's the thing. You can't look at anything as an opportunity. You have to look at it as a job opening. That's all it is. The opportunity comes in the negotiation. That's where the opportunity comes. Because if it's not going to work for you, if there are certain conditions that they are presenting to you that you feel like, you know what, this is not going to work for me, then how is that an opportunity?
Yeah.
That can't be an opportunity for you.
Do you ever feel like, let me ask you a question. Do you ever feel like you have, when you negotiate or when you decide to get a lawyer, that like you have to negotiate on the behalf of all women, like all of us?
I've never actually felt that way.
Is that wrong for me to even say that? I'm just wondering if you ever feel like that.
No, I've never felt that way in particular. I think each negotiation is very individualized, which is why you have so many people, so many variations, right, of salary and rates within the same scope of practice, right? So I think, I can't negotiate on behalf of everybody and be like, well, if I get this, then they will give this to all women. No, they might just give it to me. And not give it to, all the other women who come behind. But I think this is the importance of this show, right? Is basically to showcase to our audience that, hey, listen, these are the reasons that you should negotiate. Here is how you should approach a negotiation. Here's a mindset with which you should enter negotiations. If you are uncomfortable negotiating, here is what you can do. You can get a lawyer to do it on your behalf. And be willing to put everything that you want on the table, know what your deal breakers are, and know where you're willing to compromise, right? So I read a book recently called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And it's a negotiation book. He actually was a hostage negotiator. And this book there's like 50-50 on this book, where people are like, oh, this is a horrible book because when am I ever going to be a hostage negotiator? And people who love the book is like, huh?
You're missing the point.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Those people are missing the point. The whole point of the book is how to become a better communicator so that you come to the best possible outcome. So that it is an opportunity, in this example, an opportunity for the hospital and an opportunity for you, the best possible outcome. I think that's how we need to start looking at it.
So I want to circle back to your point about you don't share rates with others. So I am very similar. I don't share my rates with everyone, but I have shared my rates with other docs who are locums who I know will be responsible with that amount, because I feel the same way as you, right? Like the way in which I structure my contract is I make myself as efficient as possible. And I'm going to put it out there on Front Street. I'm going to put it out there right now and tell people right now, like, I became a better doctor when I became better at business. That's it. I'm going to tell people, just really, when I knew how to negotiate for myself, when I knew how to value my time, and when I knew how to understand the value that I bring to a hospital and properly monetize that, I think I became a better doctor because I knew how to advocate for myself. I knew when I am at my best. And then I know, look, there's certain things that you want that I can't do, and I can't overtax myself, and that's it. And when I know that,
you protect your time.
I protect my time, and I also protect my time, but I also protect just who I am,
the mental,
right? Like the mental thing, because I know that there's only so much that I can take. And now that I'm willing to talk about that in Front Street, all my negotiations, it's made me a better doctor.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Like there are ways in which, as a doctor, as a trauma surgeon, as an OB, or even as a family med doctor, that you can be very strategic in how you make money. You can be very strategic in how you value your time. And with me, I agree with you. You can't share that with everybody, because there are people who will undercut you. There are people who will devalue your time. And for me, the folks that I've shared my rates with are people who I know those are the people who are going to look at it like sports. Right. They're going to be like, oh, what, Brett, you got that? Bet. That means that I'm going to be able to go 10% higher, 20% higher. And then they come back and let me know their numbers. And I'm like, bet, you got paid that? Word?
Right.
Got
Everybody gets a raise.
That means I know I'm going 10, 20% more than that.
Exactly.
And we just keep it going that way. And you have these conversations, and it becomes collaborative as opposed to competition. Right. And I think that that's the best way to look at it. So,
everybody gets a raise. And that really is what it should be. I mean, right now for employed docs, and I don't know if all employed docs know this, but if you are a new doc especially, and you kind of figured out that, wait a minute, I'm probably making less than my colleagues. If you are employed, W-2, you can actually go to your human resources department and ask them, what is the highest salary that someone is being paid? They don't have to tell you who, but what is the highest salary that someone is being paid for the same work that I'm doing, the same position that I'm in? If they tell you any higher than what you're currently working for, you just got a raise. You just got to tell them that's what you want.
Yeah, it's true.
You just got to tell them that's what you want. Instead of whining about, it's not fair, how does this person, da-da-da-da. Just be like, oh, word? They're making $50,000 over what I'm making? That's what I want.
Yeah, don't think that, well, if I just keep working and be quiet, someone will recognize. I think this comes to the part where you talk about, like, well, if I remain quiet and I do my job, someone will, at year 10, someone will recognize what I'm doing, give me the promotion that I deserve, or give me the pay raise that I need. And it's just not going to show up. You really have to advocate for yourself. And like I said, a lot of people don't feel comfortable. So getting a lawyer is actually something that a lot of people do. You'll be really surprised. It's okay. Yeah. I remember the first time I started doing locums, when I went to one hospital, one of the locums docs who was there also was working through another company, and they were letting me know that they were getting paid like almost $1,500 more per day than I was. And I was completely blown away. At first, I was just like, dang, I can't believe they're getting paid this much more than me. And I think you were the one who was like, well, there's no need to get mad. Just look at it as, now you know what the range is, and now you should be able to go back and ask for more from your company. And I never got as high as that, working with, this locums company. I ended up doing it myself. and I made way more. But the point was just understanding that there is like this entire space. There's
Exactly.
this other world that you can just say, wait, I don't have to just accept what's given to me. I can ask for more.
Right.
There's always more.
Right.
And for me, the math came out. You know, we're talking about women making $2 million less. Like, I was thinking about that situation where it's like, you know, they're getting paid $1,500 more per day. Like, I was doing the math in my head. Like, you multiply times 7,
Yep.
multiply times, 30 for, for days in a month, and then the years and all these different things. These guys are gonna be making like millions of dollars
compared to you.
compared to me. I got to do something about this. And this is me, like, literally within that first year of being and attending on my own. I never looked back since. And since then, I've always been like, I got to get as much that that I have leverage to ask for.
Right.
So
Right.
well, look,
So-
we went through a lot. We went through a lot, guys.
Yeah.
So remember, we talked about, trading time for dollars. We described what the difference between active income and passive income. Remember, with active income, it's a job or it's something that you personally have to show up for to get that money. And remember that it is taxed at a highest rate, right? At the highest IRS rates, it is taxed. Whereas passive income, that's something in which you may put in the initial sweat equity, but afterwards it becomes an evergreen product. Think about like creating a course, right? Things like that are taxed at a lower tax rate. Okay. We also talked about the differences in the pay gap, the pay gap between women and men physicians and how important that is and why it's very important for women to make sure you hit it out the park when you're negotiating in your first contract. Now, there's some studies out there that are showing that, these are the things that the healthcare industry, academic institutions can do to kind of decrease that gap. I'm telling y'all right now, you better not wait for that. You start speaking
exactly.
Start speaking
Waiting for
on
people to do the right thing.
Hey, start
Gina,
speaking on.
Where my poster? Where my poster that tell people what to do?
Hey, Alfred, put like Martin's "Do the Right Thing" poster right here, yo. I remember I had that Spike Lee "Do the Right Thing," one of my favorite movies of all time. Y'all need to check that out, yo. I'm shocked it never got an Oscar, but anyway, or never got nominated for one.
Are you really shocked? Come on.
I am. I love that movie. I think that's one of the best movies.
No. I'm saying, are you really shocked?
No, I'm not shocked,
Okay.
but it just got not recent. I think maybe several years ago, it got added into the Library of Congress, right? Because those are for movies that they think effectively, describe the life and times of that period. That's a big deal.
It was a classic in its time, and so people didn't realize that at the time that it came out.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And then we talked about the power of negotiating, guys, how much working for less can cost you and what not negotiating can do. And we gave you some tips, right, of how to negotiate on your own, or if you don't feel really comfortable doing it, which I highly recommend, getting a lawyer to do it on your behalf. And yes, that first, how much you're paying them, it's something that you may have to pay. But if you consider the multiples that they're going to get you back, paying $600 or $1,200 and getting an additional $20,000, an additional $20,000 per year, or maybe 30, 40, 50, or maybe an additional $100,000 or even more. Based off of that, or even getting a significant amount of loan repayback.
Right.
Hey, it is
it's a drop in the bucket.
Y'all need to check that out. So listen, guys, we talked about a lot. We appreciate y'all listening to Docs Outside the Box. I want you guys to text us at 833-230-2860. Let us know what you think about this discussion. Do you agree with what we say? Do you disagree? Or you just want to say what's up? So,
we like to hear what's up. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube.
Yo, shout out to everybody on YouTube.
Or like our son says, MewTube.
Is that what he says?
Yeah, he says MewTube.
See, that's cute. That's cute. Hey, everyone, we are slowly but surely increasing our YouTube presence. We are making and getting, like, the experience on YouTube is amazing. Like, what we are able to do visually, what we're able to do with our interaction with
Shout out to Alfred, yo.
Shout out to Alfred. Shout out to Christian also with our audio experience. But we are taking things to another level. So we definitely appreciate y'all who are listening through YouTube. And if you're listening through podcasts, we love it. It's great. But just consider checking us out on YouTube. So listen, Renee, let's get out of this because, it's getting late.
It's late. Getting late. It's late.
All right. It is late.
Tired.
I'm supposed to be on call in less than, I'm not going to say how many hours.
I'm on call.
But
with our kids.
Hey, guys, we will catch you guys on the next episode of Docs Outside the Box.
Peace.
Peace. I'm gonna drag it out.